My name is Dr. Amr MABROUK. Dua Muhammad is at the control, and we're here with you for 1 hour. And today is the world of books in the world of info. Today we are presenting 3 very interesting books that deserve to be read. The books are The Forgotten Palaces of Egypt by Caroline Corcoran. And the second book is 75 Years About Commercial Egyptian Flight by Ahmad Asmat al-Gamal. And the third book is about Douglas MacArthur, an American hero. Actually, they are 2 books about MacArthur put in one. That is The American Hero, and the other one is called The American Caesar. So let's start right away with the world of info and the world of books. And the first book is The Forgotten Palaces of Egypt by Caroline Corcoran. Caroline Corcoran has been working in the Senghor University. She lived for some time in Egypt, and she has written this beautiful book about the famous palaces and the forgotten palaces in Egypt. And when we talk about forgotten palaces, she didn't talk mainly about the palaces of the ancient Mamluks or of the rest of the Egyptian history, because we have, of course, some of the remnants of the Mamluks and the Ottoman period palaces, although they are few, but still they carry very important information about how the people lived during the Mamluk times and during the Ottoman times. For example, there is, of course, the Bushtak palace, which was built by Bushtak, who was the son-in-law of Nasser Muhammad ibn Khalawun. And this beautiful palace has been built in Mu'azz al-Din Street, and it is in a very short proximity to the mosque and the school and the mausoleum of his father-in-law Nasser Muhammad. And this is a very beautiful palace. Also, there is Beit al-Sahimi, and there, of course, the Geir Anderson Museum, or now the beautiful palace near Ahmad ibn Tulun. And also, we have known that in Al-Qata'a, there has been a huge number of palaces which were very beautiful in Al-Qata'a, but 2 of them stand as a very important palaces. The one of Ibn Tulun himself, and the other of Khamarawi, his son. But of course, we know that what happened to Al-Qata'a, that it has been all destroyed except for the mosque of Ibn Tulun, which was kept standing up till now. Also, we know, of course, the famous novel of Naguib Mahfouz called Bain al-Qasrin, or Between Two Palaces, and he is referring to a very important 2 palaces that were together, the Eastern Palace and the Western Palace, which were built by the Fatimids in Cairo, on the gates of Cairo towards the gate of Al-Futuh and the gate of that's the Victory Gate and the Conquest Gate. Of course, these 2 palaces, unfortunately, have been destroyed by time and also by orders from Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. So this is a small or a short resume of some of the palaces in the Fatimid period, and in the Mamluk period, and in the Ottoman period, and of course in the Tulunid period. But Caroline Corcoran was interested in the palaces that were built in the 19th and the 20th century, or to make it more precise, the palaces of Muhammad Ali dynasty. And of course, she started giving us a resume about these palaces, starting with the Palace of Al-Azbakiyya, which was originally built by Al-Alfi Bey in 1797. And this palace in particular was a very favorite palace of Muhammad Ali. First, it was taken by Napoleon Bonaparte to be his own house when he stayed in Cairo. And later on, when Muhammad Ali came, as we know through the history, as a commander of the Albanian regiment that came to fill in the vacuum of what happened after the French removal from Egypt in 1801 and the Ottoman
army that was sent, and there was, of course, one of the governors of Egypt appointed by the Ottomans. The Egyptians didn't like and preferred and asked, especially through the demands of Amr MABROUK, the chief of the Ashraf, or the honorable people, who are the descendants of the Prophet. They have presented a request to the Sultan, the Ottoman Sultan, to make Muhammad Ali the governor of Egypt, the Ottoman governor of Egypt, which the Sultan accepted, and Muhammad Ali accepted it humbly. Were in Azbakiya Palace, or the Azbakiya Palace, which was there in 1805. And this marks the start of Muhammad Ali, place and reign. However, Muhammad Ali, although he liked very much Al-Azbakiya Palace, didn't stay for a long period in it, because this palace was very much near to the number of conspirators who are from the Mamluks, who even tried to assassinate him. And this palace was inside Cairo itself, and therefore very near to any assassinators or any plots that can be made on his life, which actually happened twice. So Muhammad Ali decided to build his own palace in the Gawhara, or called the Gawhara Palace, in the citadel itself, after removing some of the palaces that were there, including the Nasir Muhammad Palace and other palaces, the remnants of other palaces. And he built his palace in 1811, and it is 1811 to 1814. And from this palace, and also from the Harim Palace, he was able to watch what happened in the famous massacre of the Mamluks that has been there in this particular nearby of the Gawhara Palace. Another palaces of Muhammad Ali that were built was the Musafir Khana Palace, which unfortunately does not exist anymore, and the Muhammad Ali Palace in Shubra. He liked this palace very much because it was overlooking the Nile, and this palace still exists up till now, and it has seen the joy and the happiness of Muhammad Ali staying in this palace, although it carries a bad memory. When his son Tosun died in his way back from the Arab Peninsula, died from illness, they informed him in the palace, and this carried a very big scar for him. He also liked very much to live in Ras al-Tin Palace in Alexandria, overlooking the eastern port of Alexandria. And this palace has been a favorite palace for him and for a lot of his descendants. For example, Sa'id, and even Ismail and Fuad and Farouk. However, Ismail was not a big fan of Alexandria, but the rest of the royal families always liked to stay in Ras al-Tin when they were in Alexandria, and of course, especially Sa'id, where he lived, and he preferred to live in Alexandria. Another palace, of course, is the Palace of Dubara, and this was for the daughter of Muhammad Ali. Now the palace in its place is the palace of designated by the British Embassy, but it has been renewed several times later on. Another palace is the High Palace in front of the Romania Roda Island, which of course does not exist anymore. And of course, when we talk, this was built by Ibrahim Pasha. Abbas Pasha, the one who governed Egypt after the death of Muhammad Ali, and due to the premature death of Ibrahim Pasha, he was his grandson, but he was the eldest of the Muhammad Ali dynasty, and therefore he was appointed as the governor of Egypt, or the Wali, and he stayed from 1849 till 1854. He was not in good terms with the rest of the family, and he liked very much, or he, as a loner, would prefer to build palaces in the desert. So he built the Za'faran Palace in Qalyubiyya as well, and even on the Suez Road, Dar al-Bayda, and also a lot of palaces His Zafaran Palace was actually an old palace, not the palace that was built later on by Ismail Basha, so which is now the headquarters of Ain Shams University. So Zafaran was built in what is now known as the army barracks, and it was burned, unfortunately, and it does not exist anymore. He also built a palace near St. Catherine and Ayun Musa, and this palace, a small rest house, has been abandoned because his family was spending some time over there when they knew about his death, and therefore they considered this palace to be a bad omen of this. Said Basha was a great builder of palaces, and whenever he does dislike a palace, he would just destroy it and take all of the trophies from it and put it in another palace. He loved Alexandria, as I was talking about, so he built a palace called Palace of Qabbari. Qabbari was near actually the graves, and Qabbari stays for the graveyards, but it was a bit modified to the word Al-Qabbari. And also he built a palace in Al-Maks area. As for Ismail, and Muhammad Ali had his palace built in Qasr al-Nil, which is now the place of the famous hotel that was Nile Hilton, and later on now it's called Ritz-Carlton. Ismail Basha built a very huge palace on the opposite side of the Nile, on the western side of the Nile, and its garden was changed into the Giza Zoo. So this palace does not exist anymore, but the zoo, thank God, is there. Of course, we are familiar with the Gezira Palace, which is now part of it is the Hotel Marriott, and this history of Gezira Palace is very interesting because Muhammad, the family sold this palace. It was a project of a hotel, was for a short period of time in the 1890s, and later on it was bought by the early 20th century by Lutfallah family, who are a very rich family living in Lebanon and Syria, and they have invested in this palace and consider it to be part of their home. And later on, it has been transferred to the government after 1952, and in it was built an old hotel, and later on the two famous towers near the Gezira Palace. And of course, the Gezira Palace was built in particular for Eugenie, the Empress of France, the wife of Napoleon III, to live in it during the opening of the Suez Canal. Another important palace is Zafaran Palace, which is, as I said before, is the new one, and it has been built in the Abbasiyya region, and it is taken up sometimes for to be the headquarters of the Egyptian University, which later on became Fuad University or Cairo University later on. And then it was transferred to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, where a lot of meetings were done in preparation for the start of the Arab League in 1945-1946, and later on it has been transferred to become the headquarters of Ain Shams University, where its president still works from there. Another palace is the Palace of Ismailiyya and Qantara and Helwan. They all were built by Ismail, who was a big spender, and he decided to build these palaces in Ismailiyya and in Qantara also to commemorate and celebrate the opening of the Suez Canal. A lot of palaces later on, we can talk about Ramla Palace and the Munira Palace, which is now part of the French Cultural Center, and in Helwan as well. Later on, the Tawfiq has lived in the Palace of Helwan, and unfortunately he passed away there in 1892. His son, Abbas Hilmi II, decided to build the palace in Qasr al-Qubba, or the Palace of al-Qubba, near Kubri al-Ubba region, where there is a very famous dome over there. belongs to the Ottoman period. However, originally this was a small rest house built by Ibrahim Pasha. Later on, Abbas II decided to build a very beautiful palace there. And in this palace, with the whole gardens of it, this was a preferable living quarters for Abbas al-Hilmi II, and short-lived also Sultan Hussein, and Fuad preferred to live there, and so did Farouk. So this area, or Qasr al-Qubba, has become a favorite place for them. Of course, we know the Muntaza Palace, built by Abbas Hilmi II, Abdin, built by Ismail Pasha, and it was considered to be the official palace of the king. And of course, Ras al-Tin, we talked about it. As we go into the early 20th century, the Muhammad Ali dynasty members decided to build smaller palaces than the big ones that they used to be built, because the big ones needed a lot of staff and needed a lot of service, and therefore they decided to build small palaces, which were actually keeping the great beauty. Of these palaces, we should talk about Saeed Halim, the Prince Saeed Halim, who was the son of the youngest son of Muhammad Ali. So he was the grandson of Muhammad Ali. He lived in Istanbul with his father, who left Egypt in 1884 and stayed there. And he worked with the Turkish government, or the Ottoman government, and he became not only the foreign service minister, he later on became the prime minister during World War I. And after the war, he lived for some time in Italy, where he was assassinated. He had built himself a very beautiful palace, which is very close proximity to, and it still exists up till now, but not used as a palace, very close proximity to the Egyptian Museum in the Tahrir Square. The Manial Palace is the famous palace of Prince Muhammad Ali Tawfiq, who was the crown prince twice. First, during the reign of King Fuad, until he had his son Farouk, and then later on he became the crown prince of King Farouk until Farouk had his son delivered in 1952. He always dreamed of becoming the ruler of Egypt, but this dream never came true, although he has built himself a throne hall in the beautiful palace that he has designed himself. And in this palace in particular, there is a beautiful botanic garden which exists up till now. And Muhammad Ali Tawfiq, even during his reign as a prince, has decided that this palace should go to the government and be used as a museum. And during his life and during his prince time, he allowed the visitors to pass to the garden, not to the palace, of course, but to the garden. And later on, the palace has become a museum. Another two very important palaces are the palaces of Prince Yusuf Kemal. Yusuf Kemal has employed with him the famous architect Lashak to build him two palaces. One is in Al-Matariya, and the other is built also in the Neo Mamluk style in Naga Hammadi, where his palace is and where his 17,000 acres of fertile land was. And he built this palace over there in Naga Hammadi. Another prince has built a small palace which is very beautiful near the Gezira Palace, and his name is Amr Ibrahim, which is now the famous pottery museum, and it's built under the style of Al Hamra Palace of Spain. Well, actually, this is a very nice book about the palaces of Egypt, or the Forgotten Palaces of Egypt, by Caroline Corhan, and definitely it's a book that deserves to be read. So stay tuned with us to the world of info and the world of books. So you're still listening to the world of info, and today is the world of books. The second book of today is 75 Years with the Egyptian Commercial Aviation by Ahmad Asmat al-Gammal. This is a very interesting book because this book is telling us the biography of this gentleman who lived almost for 95 years. And he, how to measure the times on the lives of a human being is by saying or by claiming that it all depends on how you live your life. Do you live your life in depth, enjoying every day, having a good thing to do every day, or you're just passing time on earth? And I believe that Mr. Ahmad Asmat al-Gammal has done a lot of efforts in his life. And he belongs to a famous family, and his parent and his father and his grandfather were working in business or in dairy business. His grandfather worked in Dumyat and built himself a factory or a dairy factory, while his son went to Cairo and stayed there and opened a business as well, where he had pieces of land. He had his own dairy industry, and he had his own shop for pastry in very important streets of Cairo. Ahmad Asmat al-Gammal was the second son of him, and they used to have always a vacation in Ras Al Barr in the summer. When he was quite young, in the early 30s or the mid 30s, when he was having his summer vacation in Ras Al Barr, he found out that there is planes, small planes that come, and for 50 piastres you can go on the plane and have a tour with in one seat plane, one passenger plane, and you enjoy for 5 minutes flying over Ras Al Barr. And this just has mesmerized him, that he decided that he has to study to become a pilot. And this is what happened really. After taking his high school diploma, his father told him better go to the Faculty of Agriculture, because we have a big piece of land that is 200 acres, and I think that you should learn how to be a good botanist or a good interested or in the agriculture, and study it in thorough to understand how to plant your piece of land. So he went to the Faculty of Agriculture, and he promised that he's going to graduate from it. While at the same time, he was saving some of the money that he was getting through minor works in high school and in the Faculty of Agriculture during his times and free times. And by this money he made, he decided to study to become a pilot and have a license of a pilot, which he did. So studying went hand in hand of both studying for being a pilot and studying in the Faculty of Agriculture. His father didn't know that until 3 years have passed, and he was almost getting his license when his father knew, and he said to him, I will keep my word, I will graduate from the Faculty of Agriculture, but I have graduated from the faculty or from this Institute of Aviation, and I will have a license of a pilot. And his license was number 97, because they were all fighting to get the pilot license less than number 100. So it makes them very part of the pioneers of aviation in Egypt. So he graduated in 1943 or 44, and at that time the war was going to end, World War II, and in 1945 there were a lot of planes that were offered by the Americans and the British to be sold. And these planes were small planes that could have 4 to 6 passengers. So he bought one, and he took the money from his mother, and he started his own company. And this is what's so interesting. He started a small company made of one plane, and later on he bought 2 or 3 planes, in 1945, that they would go from the Almaza airport to Jerusalem every day in the morning, carrying the British journals to Jerusalem before 8 o'clock. They have to reach there, so these newspapers can be sold at the proper timing in Jerusalem. So this was the start of his first business going through. And after that, due to the war that erupted and the State of Israel proclamation of this part, so he couldn't fulfill, of course, the contract. So he shut down his company for some time and started his own work with a company called Saida. Saida was a company that belonged to members of the royal family, and they made it to compete with Egypt Air. So he started working as a second officer or as a first officer on these planes, which were doing very fine for a good time and period of time in aviation. And this went on from 1949 till 1953. In 1953, Saida was put off the market because it belonged to the royal family. So suddenly he found himself without a work. And therefore he applied to work as a pilot in the Jordanian Airways. And with this, he continued his career in flight as a pilot. And he went on working for the Jordanian Airways for some time. And later on, they have known that he is a very good administrator, and he loved very much the administration of aviation. And so he decided to give up his job as a pilot, because he found that it is not that entertaining or interesting as much as he's doing in the administration of aviation. So he did both hats, that is to become a pilot and at the same time working in the administrative field. For some time he worked like this, and later on he was the Jordanian company stopped its activities and being bought by another company. So at that time he was made an offer to work in Egypt Air and to open up the office in Tokyo in 1961. So at that place, the Egypt Air wanted to start its own route between Cairo and Tokyo. So he went to Japan in 1961, 1962, and opened up the first office of Egypt Air in Tokyo. And through his administrative skills, he was able to get a very good office in a very good area. And over there, he started working very heavily and increasing and promoting for the company. Suddenly, in 1967, he was laid off his work, but he decided that he's going to continue in Tokyo for some time until the things have improved. And they brought him back for his expertise to work again and open up the line between Cairo and Tokyo. He stayed working in Tokyo for quite a long time as the head of the Egypt Air office. And during this period, he married to a Japanese lady and had two Egyptian Japanese daughters. He worked heavily in this place, and later on left Egypt Air to work on the Egypt Tours or Egyptian Tours, the touristic company of Egypt. And he invested a lot of time working there for a period of time till the late 80s. And later on, he built himself a new company as well in tourism and made a very good show of that. What's interesting about the book is that he has fallen many times, and every time he falls, he would come up again with an idea to start a new life again. And he never got desperate of all the situations that passed by him. And he lived a very long, fruitful life, working in his office until his early 90s. And this proves something, that human beings could be tough and could be working hard, even not surrendering to their fears or to their frustrations or to its failures. And I think this is life to learn from. So, a beautiful book, 75 Years of Commercial Egyptian Aviation by Ahmed. So, still listening to the world of info, and today is the world of books. My name is Dr. Amr MABROuk. Dua Muhammad is still at the control. Stay tuned to us for our third book of today. And the third book is by Douglas MacArthur by Arthur Herman, an American hero. And also another book about Douglas MacArthur is called The American Caesar. These two books are talking about a very famous gentleman who lived from the year 1880 till the year 1964. He lived for 84 years, and 52 years of this was working with the American army. His life is a very great model of an American officer. And he is the most highly decorated officer in the American army because of his tenure during World War I and World War II, and in Korea as well. He has got the highest honor, that is the Medal of Honor, for his work in World War II. And also his father, who was also a general, an American general, had this Medal of Honor. And this makes him one of two people who have got the Medal of Honor as a father and a son. And by this we mean Theodore Roosevelt Sr. and his son Theodore Roosevelt Jr. Theodore Roosevelt Sr., the president, got his, or Teddy Roosevelt, got his Medal of Honor during the War of Mexico, while his son Theodore Roosevelt Jr. got the Medal of Honor for his role in Normandy beaches on the day of invasion as the oldest general on this piece of land on this day. While MacArthur got it in Philippines Day after he withdrew cleverly from Philippines and promised to come back. So, and his father got it as well. So when we talk about MacArthur, we have to talk about why he's so accomplished. He's so accomplished because he came first of his class, worked for almost 10 years as an engineer. He was a lieutenant of his father into a famous trip to Japan, where he was exposed to the Japanese life and time, and this was in the years after 1904, because in 1904 there was the great victory of Japan over the Soviet fleet, over the Russian fleet, and this war, the Russian-Japanese war, ended by the victory of Japan, and this was the start of the new empire of Japan. He went there, he saw Japan, he understood how the Japanese really consider their emperor as their model and almost like a half god, and therefore they respect him very much. And of course, this he kept in his memory afterwards. He, during the World War I, he was a great war hero, that he has got 7 medals of silver stars and 2 distinguished service cross to become the most decorated American officer during World War I. And you know, of course, that the Americans went to war in 1917 and the war finished in 1918. So to have 7 stars, silver stars in such a short period, plus 2 distinguished crosses, proves to us how he was a very distinguished soldier. Later on, after the war, he became the superintendent of West Point, where he did a lot of modifications of the law of West Point that really has changed the character of West Point later on to the better. Also, he worked in 1928 as the chief of the Olympic Committee, preparing the American Olympic teams for the Amsterdam Olympics in 1928, where the Americans were able to gain the highest number of medals in this Olympics under his auspice. From 1930 till 1935, he became the Chief of Staff of the American Army. In this short tenure period, which was supposedly be 4 years, he was given an extra year by Roosevelt. He was appointed by Herbert Hoover, and then later on worked with Roosevelt, who respected him very much, especially with all the plans and ideas of modernizing the American Army and seeing by strategic vision that another war is coming again, after seeing the Nazis and seeing the Japanese on the other side. He thought that the war would come, and therefore the American Army should be prepared. So this was a very important period in the life of MacArthur. When he retired in 1935 from being the Chief of Staff, he was sent, working as an active duty, to Philippines, where he was acting as a counselor for the Philippine Company and also as the Chief of Staff of the Philippine Company at the same time, the head of observers. And one of his lieutenants at that period was Eisenhower himself, who was a major, and he was a 4-star general. Now, in 1937, he retired from the army, and then he was worked only in Philippines, but then he was called again after the war, start of the war, to active duty in 1940. And after the Pearl Harbor attacks, the Japanese started to attacking Philippines, and he was able to defend it for some time, but later on, being overwhelmed by the Japanese, he was given an order by President Roosevelt that he has to leave and to organize the American Army in the Southern Pacific region so that it will be able to defeat the Japanese and come back to Philippines, which he did as he promised. He was known very well for being a good strategist and a good tactician, and he always kept very safely, as much as possible, trying to save the lives of his soldiers. With the invasion of Japan, or presumably, which was stopped by the 2 atomic bombs, he was the senior American commander who signed the treaty of the surrender of the Japanese forces. And he later was appointed to be the supreme commander of the Allied forces in Japan. And he was to organize Japan and to arrange for the war tribunal against war crimes, and also to build up a constitution of Japan from scratch, and at the same time help Japan to go through the path of democracy. As he understood quite well what Japan is formed of, he decided that he should make Japan, because the Japanese people respected very much the emperor, and if the Americans or the Allies decide to put the Japanese emperor under the court or the tribunal, International Tribunal Court against war crimes, and kill him or put him in jail, this will make a lot of turbulence in Japan that will necessitate almost like a war of attrition between the Japanese and the forces of the Allies. So he was able to convince President Truman that the Japanese emperor will stay as a symbol, not in full authority, but as a symbol of the Japanese people, and to keep the simple and respected. And this is what happened. And therefore he saved the emperor and saved the Japanese people from going into another war or another difficult decision to fight the Allies. And of course, this would end with severe destruction of Japan. He was later on, when he was Supreme Commander of Japan, he was called to work in Korea with the invasion of, or crossing the parallel line of 38 by the Northern Korean forces. and he was able to stop this swarming aggressive attack by being the commander of the United Nations forces at this place. However, he was able to swarm Pyongyang and had the imagination that he should push away the Koreans further north. And when the Chinese army attacked vigorously with hundreds of thousands or more of soldiers swarming the Americans, he was asking even for an atomic bomb or local atomic strategic or tactical atomic bombs to be thrown on the Chinese, and he wanted to transfer the battle to the Chinese country itself and use up the Taiwanese forces and make a big war, and this could raise for the Third World War. Think that Truman refused, and he decided that he should be fired, and this is what happened. He was fired from being the commander-in-chief in Japan and in Korea, replaced by another general, and he took it very lightly. He refused to go into politics. He said, if you're going to give me a unanimous nomination, I will go. I will not go in competing with other nominees. And of course, that's made him not the best choice for the Republican Party. He decided that he's going to retire in good faith, and he explained his points of view for a joint meeting with the Congress and the Senate, and he received more than 20 standing ovations from both the senators and the congressmen, and later on he received also as well welcome heroes from all the American cities that he passed by. He died in the year 1964 after being the most highest decorated officer in the American Army. But what remains of MacArthur is definitely his role and his important role in securing the victory in the Pacific, and at the same time saving Japan from falling as a prey for communism or as a prey for destruction should the emperor have been subjected to a war crime judicial management. Of course, this is a very interesting role by MacArthur. So this was the end. We come to the end of our program today. Today was the world of info, the world of books. And today I presented 3 books that I hope that you have liked. The first book was The Forgotten Palaces of Egypt, a book by Caroline Korhan. The second book was The 75 Years of the Aviation Industry, Egyptian Aviation Industry by Ahmad Asmat al-Gamal. And the third book was Douglas MacArthur, a book by Arthur Herman, an American hero, and the other one was The American Caesar. And by this, we come to the end of our program. My name is Dr. Amr MABROUK. Dua Muhammad was at the control. Please always stay tuned to Radio Cairo, and we promise we'll come the same time next week. And stay tuned always to Radio Cairo. Have a very pleasant day.